Good morning. We are broadcasting here from Goodsell United Methodist Church as well as Power Chapel United Methodist Church, two of God's great churches. Goodsell is located in Lynette, Alabama, and Power Chapel is located in Lafayette, Alabama. Thank God for the believers of these two wonderful churches, and I thank God for praising me for having wonderful churches throughout my career as a pastor. I thank all of our friends and associates who are tuning in this morning. We ask you to share our message, start a watch party. Those who are in need of private prayer, please inbox me. And certainly we entertain your comments, and we praise God for all of you. Let me look at a word from the book of Daniel. Daniel, the 6th chapter. And I want to look at the 10th verse of the 6th chapter of Daniel. Daniel, the 6th chapter, at the 10th verse. It says, when Daniel learned that the document had been signed, he went to his house. Now the upper room had open windows that faced Jerusalem. Daniel knelt down to pray and praises God 3 times a day, just like he always did. Just then, these men all ganged up together, came upon Daniel praying and seeking mercy from his God. They then went to talk to the king about the law. Your Majesty didn't sign a law that for 30 days, any person who prays to any god or human being besides you, Your Majesty would be thrown into a pit of lions. And I just want to talk with you this morning from the subject, keep your windows open. Keep your windows open. Daniel Webster's dictionary defines windows as an opening in the wall of a building designed to let in light and air. However, in this day in which we live, windows does not necessarily serve that purpose for us. In the day in which we live, we have sophisticated lighting and air conditioning to bring in both light and air. And in some places, there are buildings that don't have any windows at all. And with this technology we have today, windows have an entirely different meaning altogether for our younger crowd, particularly the millennials and Generation Xers. Windows is associated with technology, which enable us to retrieve information that is sometimes difficult and almost impossible to retrieve. But we can retrieve it through this technology in a short period of time. However, I want to look at windows in an old-fashioned biblical way. The Bible tells us that King Darius was a mighty ruler of over 120 provinces in Persia. And the 3 governors was in charge of these provinces, and Daniel was president of one of these specific provinces, where the governors had to report to these men. And it is interesting to know that at the time Daniel served in this position, Daniel was an old man. And this suggests to me to suggest to you that it is not good to use age or lack of age as an excuse for not doing anything. In fact, some would say they are too old. Some would say they're too young. Some would say they're too old to do this, that, or the other. but one of the greatest baseball players that ever lived, a man named Satchel Paige. He had been a star in the Major League Baseball, and he was an old man when he was drafted into the major leagues. And he was 42 years old when he was drafted and 47 years old when he retired. It was Muhammad Ali who won the heavyweight boxing championship of the world at age 22. But at the old man at the boxing standards who won his championship for the unprecedented third time did the rope-a-dope in what was called the Rumble in the Jungle in Zaire, Africa, and knocked out big bad George Foreman. Nelson Mandela was put in prison at age 27, but as an old man, he rose up from the prison to the palace, and he became the president of South Africa, because you're never too old to do the job if you got the right stuff in you. I used to attend a church in Gadsden, Alabama, Shiloh Baptist Church, and one of the little mothers of the church would say, "Don't nothing get old but clothes." and Daniel had the right stuff in him. That's why this old man outdid all of the rest of the people, because he strutted his stuff, and King Darius put him over the empire and made him his right-hand man. But that is when the trouble began. If Daniel had not been successful, nobody would have paid him any attention. In fact, they would have looked right over him. There is safety by not doing anything. You might go unnoticed by not doing anything. It might be easy if you don't do anything, but it is a different story when you stand up like a man or stand up like a woman and show the world your God-given leadership. And I'm under the presupposition that all of us have some kind of God-given leadership potential, because it is all of our jobs to win somebody to Christ. Because by doing so, people will plot and plan on you. People will plan for you. People will scheme for you. People will try to keep you from being successful. People will try to pull you down, because when you are successful, you become everybody's guinea pig. Everybody comes along and say they wish you well, but many of them hope that you fail. Some of that crowd hope that you catch hell, because when you are successful, you make some people upset because you disturb their equilibrium. And it means that they have to do something for God or do something for themselves. And some of them will be jealous of you. Jealousy is a dangerous thing, that no matter how much you have, no matter how little you have, somebody will be jealous of you. Jealousy will raise its ugly head around you. Jealousy will raise its ugly head in your home. Jealousy will raise its ugly head in your neighborhood. Jealousy will raise its ugly head in your town. Jealousy will raise its ugly head in your city. And jealousy will raise its ugly head in your family. And so Daniel's enemies went into a jealous rage, and they searched and searched and searched to see if they could find any fault in Daniel. But Daniel was such a God-fearing man. The only fault they could find in Daniel was that Daniel was determined to love and serve his God. And that is the best thing that any of your enemies can find in you, if you are determined to love and serve your God. Daniel was a person of dignity. Daniel was a person of integrity. Daniel was a loving person. He was a man who was honest and fair in his dealings. He was industrious and trustworthy, a man who tried to treat everybody right. Daniel had his stuff together, and they could not find any fault in this man. And the only thing that they could come up with, that he was obedient to God. And the Bible calls these men plotters. And back when I was cutting the food, not far from here at Fort Benning, Georgia, as a young soldier. In fact, the OJs used to have a song called The Backstabbers. In fact, they said they will smile in your face, and at the same time, they will try to take your place. And I found out that plotters are the members of the Tater family. They are instigators, aggravators, spectators, dictators, and they might be haters and sometimes church potatoes, but they're very seldom participators. And they tend to reproduce new plotters who are on their way, and they are not interested in school, not interested in Sunday school, not interested in church, not interested in anything positive. And I like to call them tater tots. And the way you can recognize plotters is when you're trying to do everything right and they don't do anything at all, when they take credit for everything that's going right but don't take credit for anything that's going wrong. They will talk about you. They will lie on you. They will criticize you. They will shine the light on you to keep people from seeing their sins, their lack of confidence, their lack of faith in God. They will always be trying to find something wrong in you. They will find fault in a perfect person if they could possibly find a perfect person. And for the pastor, if he has been to school, they will say that the pastor think he knows everything. If he had not been to school, they would say, our pastor sure is dumb. If you have a little education, yeah, they use that against you. If the pastor is a woman, they say, well, we need a man. If the pastor is a man, they say, well, we need a woman. If the pastor is laid back, they will say our pastor don't care about anything. If the pastor tries to raise the standard, they say, oh, we have an old dictator. If the church don't have any money, they will blame the pastor. If the pastor talk about money, they say he sure is money hungry. The only thing he talks about is money all of the time. If the pastor's wife is not involved in the church, they would say she is not concerned about her husband's work. But if she is concerned about her husband's work, they would say she sure is bossy. She's trying to run everything from the bedroom all the way down to the boardroom. And you can preach your heart out Sunday after Sunday, and most of them won't be able to hear a mumbling word you say, because half of them come to church mad because they think that the church is too hot, and the other half come to church mad because they think the church is too cold. And you can't please people. You got to please God. And so these hard-to-please plotters studied everything about Daniel. Plotters will read you just like a book. Sometimes they know more about you than you know about themselves. They certainly did not mean Daniel any good. They did not mean the king any good, but they knew that they could go through the king in order to destroy Daniel. Sometimes when people can't get next to you, they will get next to somebody around you in order to get you. They knew that the king's weakness was flattery. He was easy to get, the big head. So they went to the king and said, "Oh, king, you are the best king that we have ever seen. You ought to live forever." They told the king that they had had a meeting and agreed among themselves that no other God should be worshiped in the kingdom for 30 days but the king, because he was such a great king. He should be worshiped as God. But they didn't tell the king that Daniel was not in the meeting. They told the king that they wanted a stamp of approval on the law, that if anyone worshiped any God but the king, he would be thrown in a den of hungry lions. And so they put the king up on a pedestal to be the only God with a little g that could be worshipped in 30 days. And they tricked the king into putting this stamp of approval on it so that law could not be changed under any kind of circumstances, because they knew Daniel's prayer habits and they knew he would be true to the God of his salvation. And isn't it strange how the world hates good people? But if it was not for good people, God would destroy them. Like God destroyed ancient Babylon and Rome and Sodom and Gomorrah, how God destroyed that crowd during the time of Noah, because good people in the world is what immune cells are to the body. Things are as well as they are because of good people. Good people always is the solution to making things better. And people always bad mouth the church. And yes, the church has a lot of work to do, but think about what kind of world this would be if the church did not do what it is doing. And let me tell y'all something. The world is not a friend to a child of God. But Daniel was not suffering from the kind of sickness that most of us suffer from in this day and age. Some of us, when we get a little materially, we'll go down spiritually. But Daniel went up both materially and spiritually at the same time, because Daniel had courage, confidence, and faith, which can only come from God, because the petition did not and could not stop anybody from praying. It just said, don't get caught praying. Daniel could have sneaked around and prayed. Daniel could have left town and prayed. Daniel knew that the plotters was watching him. Daniel knew that the plotters was trying to kill him. Daniel could have put on a disguise, sunglasses or wig, and prayed. Daniel could have went in the house, closed all the blinds, stopped all the keyholes, pulled down the blinds, got under the bed, and prayed in the dark and silence so that no one could hear him praying. But Daniel was not afraid of losing friendship with man. He was afraid of losing friendship with God. He had his priorities in order. And most of us don't have our priorities in order, because there might come a time when we have to disobey a worldly king in order to please the King of Kings. In order to please the King of Kings. Daniel was not wishy-washy. People might not like you, but they will respect you if you stand for something. The old crowd used to say, stand for something, because if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. Everybody ought to stand for something. Dr. Martin Luther King said that if a man has not found something he would die for, he is not fit to live. And that's why Daniel was both worldly successful and spiritually successful. But sometimes the more God blesses us, the more God loses us. But Daniel had favor with God in both poverty and prosperity. He had favor with God in both slavery and freedom. And another thing I like about Daniel is he did not argue with his enemies. Daniel talked the talk, and Daniel walked the walk. Daniel kept doing what he had been doing. Daniel continued to stand up and pray with his windows open. And some of you will be quick to say or quick to think, well, the Bible says, don't pray to be seen by men. And when you pray, go into the closet and pray. Yes, the Bible says that, but it does not mean that
in this case, because this is a case of letting the world know what side that you're on, because Jesus said men ought always pray and not faint. Because when you pray, you will get peace in the midst of confusion. When you pray, you can see Christ in the midst of any crisis. When you pray, you can see beyond the circumstances to the God that's able to handle any kind of circumstances. That's why Daniel got down on his knees and prayed with his windows open, turning toward Jerusalem, because Jerusalem was the city of his faith, the city of his fathers, and the city of God. But these plotters were determined to get Daniel by any means necessary. And they decided to throw him in this inescapable death trap. The lion's den was a deep hole dug in the ground with a movable partition in the middle of the hole. It housed the lions on one side of the partition, and when it was feeding time for the lions, they would remove the partition, and the lion would go and slay his prey and dinner on the other end. But on this day, when they threw Daniel in that lion's den, God stopped the mouths of those hungry lions, and God also stopped the liars, because the king turned and could not sleep that night, and he knew Daniel was one of the most faithful workers in his kingdom. And when he read the minutes, he found out that Daniel had even saved his life. And the king rushed down to the lion's den and called out Daniel's name. And when he saw Daniel had not been eaten by the lion, he realized that only the one and true God could have saved Daniel's life. That's when the king gave the order for the lions to be thrown in and ate up by the same lions that they had prepared for Daniel. That's what I stopped by to tell you this morning. When you are plotting on, keep your windows open. When you are lied on, keep your windows open. When you're spied on, keep your windows open. When you're talked about, keep your windows open. When your name is hung on every signboard, keep your windows open. When you're called everything but a child of God, keep your windows open. Keep your windows open in times like this, when bitter folks won't sweeten up, when messy folks won't clean up, when sleepy folks won't work up, when church folks won't look up, when baby folks won't grow up, when northern folks won't quiet up, when quiet folks won't speak up, when dumb folk won't wise up, when stingy folk won't pay up, when hateful folk won't look up, when crooked folk won't straighten up. Keep your windows open. Keep your windows open. God bless you. God bless you. Be safe. And I love each and every one of you.